Welcome back to Perspectives. The head of Israel's spy agency, the Mossad, is warning that efforts to drive the Islamic State terror group from the region are paving the way for Iran to expand its influence. Our defense correspondent Chloe Liu looks at what a growing Iranian influence could mean for the Middle East and how leaders in Israel are responding to this threat in the next report.
Iran's growing influence in the Middle East is raising red flags among its regional rivals. On Sunday, the head of the Mossad, Israel's overseas spy agency, cautioned against the long arm of the Islamic Republic.
In places where the presence of the Islamic State is diminishing, Iran is working to fill the void.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also took up the theme.
Islamic State departs, Iran enters. Simple. We're talking mainly about Syria. Our policy is clear. We strongly oppose the military buildup of Iran and its satellites, primarily Hezbollah in Syria, and we will do everything necessary to preserve Israel's security.
The statements refer to recent advances by Iranian-backed Shiite militias in southeastern Syria, as the Islamic State continues to lose ground. The Israeli Prime Minister's office also released a statement saying the nuclear deal between Iran and the West is increasing Tehran's aggression in the region. Iran announced on Sunday that it is strengthening its military might in response to new U.S. sanctions. Tehran approved over $500 million in funding for its ballistic missile program and foreign operations of the Revolutionary Guards. It's no secret that Iran and its many proxies across the Middle East are positioning themselves to step into emerging power vacuums. Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Yemen are just a few countries where Iran is jockeying for greater influence. Meanwhile, the U.S.'s current role in the Middle East is focused on the fight against the Islamic State. But as the battle against IS winds down, Israel's focus remains firmly on Iran and its proxies, namely Hezbollah. And Israel is cautioning against allowing one threat to displace another. Chloe Liu, I-24 News.
Iran is currently actively involved in Syria. This map shows the shrinking territories of the Islamic State in Syria and Iraq, with the terror group still claiming significant control there, including their de facto capital of Raqqa and the area close to the border with Israel. That's, of course, the prime concern for Israeli leadership. And Israeli defense chiefs are set to travel to Washington this week for high-level talks with the White House about the situation in Syria and Lebanon. According to the Israeli daily Haaretz, the head of the Mossad and the commander of Israeli Army Intelligence will meet National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster to discuss Israel's security concerns on its northern border. Israel is worried that the ceasefire deal in southwestern Syria leaves room for Iran to build a threatening military presence. And to discuss all this further, I'm now joined by Matthew RJ Brodsky. Matthew, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
So first of all, let's start with this Mossad claim that Iran is indeed expanding its influence in the region as the Islamic State flees, leaving this void for Iran to come in. What exactly does this mean? How is it filling this void, and what kind of influence are we talking about?
Well, first of all, in Syria, any place that ISIS leaves from and that the United States or its allies from the SDF forces if they don't take that territory or other allied groups, then anything that's Assad is essentially Iran's to begin with. And the same thing with Lebanon, which is essentially run by Hezbollah, which all those strategic decisions as far as war and peace are made by the masters in Tehran. So, you know, anything that is good for Assad is essentially good for Iran. As to the economic position that Iran is in, yes, that's from the nuclear deal. It was a horrible deal. There's nothing really new there other than everyone is waiting for the Trump administration to decide what their Iran policy is going to be, because that's half of what they wanted to do in the Middle East. The other half is destroying ISIS, which they seem to be doing.
Now, as we mentioned, this increasing Iranian influence, we've heard from Israeli leaders that they're very concerned about the potential for Iranian proxies on their northern border. Does this expanding Iranian influence in the region pose a real threat to Israel on a practical level, on the day-to-day basis?
On the day-to-day basis, I mean, it goes to a matter of what Iran is going to have and be able to use militarily if someone were to attack its nuclear program, and that's really what the math is going to come down to. It literally will come down to mostly between Hezbollah, a decision that they're not going to make strategically, but that will be made in Iran, and at what point Israel decides that they can't live with the situation with Hezbollah, with missile factories that are apparently being developed underground, and the increased rockets that they have. So it's literally an increased threat that will be, on the horizon. It would be nice to see the United States do something in Syria. I don't know if McMaster, the national security coordinator out here, is going to come to an agreement with Mossad and with Israel, Netanyahu, as to what's going to happen in Syria. If not, it's really a matter of if Netanyahu is going to be convinced that the U.S. is going to do something that's enough in his interest, or whether Israel is going to have to act on its own.
And those are questions that people in Israel are asking very often. Matthew, thank you so much for that analysis, and thanks for joining us. Coming up, North Korea says its plan to attack the U.S. Pacific territory of Guam is now ready. We look at what that could mean for Americans stationed there, along with U.S. efforts to calm the tensions after this short break.